So good afternoon to all of you. We are about 40 participants, a little delay in our starting. But I understand from what she just mentioned that today is the last day of your sensitization program, which means you have actually got quite well informed about the national education policy in this 7 days or 10 days that you had the program. May I request a few participants before I go to talk about governance and leadership as well as management in as aligned to the NEP to share your thoughts on your ground level issues with regard to implementation of NEP. It is about 2:36 now, maybe till 2:45. I can take in a couple of you who would like to share your thoughts. May I also request all the participants to keep their videos on. I don't think we are at a very premature stage of internet connectivity. So I would request all the participants to switch on your cameras. And when you are interacting, please introduce in terms of your discipline and the institution you are associated. Can I get a few of you to interact with me first before my talk, please? No, I think it is mandatory that we should keep our cameras on. Otherwise, I think I'll have to bring this to the notice of the senior coordinator there that you all are not following the protocol. This is sort of untenable. Please switch on your videos, and I would request whoever is hosting this from the AMU side to take note of it and instruct the participants. I am not worried whether other resource persons do it or not, but I'm very particular that all the participants switch on their videos, please.
Ma'am, again and again, they all are instructed regarding this, but I don't understand why they are not opening their videos.
So that's because it is not being done on all the days. As simple as that. It's not that when Shakila Shamsu asks, people will switch it on. On the day one that you conduct the program, it has to be clearly indicated to the participants when they are registering for the program that they will attend the program with the videos on, and you're expected during the session to also click the photographs and share it with the UGC. These are all mandatory things that we should ensure so that online sessions are not a mockery, but are done with the seriousness and rigor of face-to-face sessions. I take serious note of such kind of conduct of programs which do not maintain the protocol of a orientation and sensitization program. So please carry this forward to Dr. Faizaji that I am taking serious objection to the fact that participants, in spite of being told, do not switch on the cameras, which is a mandatory requirement of an online session, please. May I now request participants to interact? Yeah, please do that.
I will convey this, ma'am.
Yeah, please.
Participants, you are now, it's not a request, it's an order from the resource person to switch on your videos. Switch on your videos, otherwise I have to remove you from the class. अपना वीडियो ऑन करिए, नहीं तो मैं आपको क्लास में से निकाल दूंगा.
Yeah, can I get a few participants to share their concerns and experiences on implementing NEP rather than having it like a monologue from my side?
Good afternoon, ma'am. Myself, Dr. Aarti from Vardhaman College, Bijnor. And ma'am, the main problem that we are facing from last 2 years, that there are so many types of examination, whether it is internal or external, vocational, extracurricular, and as I am seeing in my 8-year service period, there's day by day, there is degradation of staff in degree colleges. And that's why student is very confused in all type of exams. And even she can't memorize or remember that in which exam he have to continue or in which he have to do backs. And it's a major problem in front of all of us. What I am facing in as now it is 3rd batch and 2 batches already passed out. And the another main problem, then if a candidate have back in 5th sem, then he will appear in the next 5th year examination. That's why he have a lack of or wastage of 1 year. जैसे आप जो 5th
semester,
यस मैम, जो 5th सेम में जिस बच्चे की बैक है और वो 6th भी क्वालिफाई कर गया, बट वो अब किसी पीजी प्रोग्राम में या कहीं अपीयर नहीं हो पाएगा. और वो जो लास्ट ईयर नेक्स्ट ईयर जब 5th सेम का एग्जाम होगा तभी वो अपीयर होगा. वो इम्प्रूवमेंट वाला सिस्टम तो क्योंकि खत्म हो गया है. और मैम मतलब हम तो अपने प्लेटफॉर्म पे यही देख रहे हैं कि हमारे पास इतना शार्प बच्चा तो है नहीं कि जो वो जैसे ही अपियर हो और वो क्वालिफाई कर जाए, बैक्स का नंबर तो रहता ही है। देखिए मेजर प्रॉब्लम तो यही है, और बच्चा बहुत कंफ्यूज है, बहुत बार हम भी कंफ्यूज हैं, हमें भी नहीं समझ में आ रहा हम उसे क्या समझाएं। और क्योंकि सर मैम ऑलरेडी 2 सेम है, उनमें मिड टर्म भी हैं, उनमें सब्जेक्ट्स भी बढ़ गए हैं, मेजर माइनर हो गया है, और बस एग्जाम में ही लगे रहते हैं। देयर इज नॉट इफेक्टिव टाइम पीरियड फॉर कंप्लीटिंग सिलेबस।
Okay. So the reason that you are facing these challenges, I wish I was talking to you about holistic and multidisciplinary education, which would have given me more time. I hope you don't mind my answering back to you in English. Is that okay with you?
No problem, ma'am. It's no problem. I am comfortable with that.
Yeah. So basically what we are saying is that we don't like the idea of year-wise calendars. We like semesters because it is easier for us to gauge and understand how much a student has understood in a given topic. Obviously, because of the semesterization, even the end of the semester exams happens twice in a year. In addition, when we tell you the formative assessment, which is what you treat as your internal assessment, you don't have to have separate year mark time for that. It is supposed to be done within your 1 hour of your class itself. Now, what has traditionally happened is that we are all so used to lecturing for 1 hour continuously and then sitting with this very blissful feeling that the student has understood everything because I taught whatever I wanted to teach. No. The reason why Indian higher education system has miserably failed in getting graduates who really know their subjects is because we are not engaging them in a number of activities. So you have to have a complete mindset change in the way in which you take a class. And all the formative that you need to do is to be done during the session itself. You don't have to keep separately for internal assessment. Say you are giving them a group discussion. If you are giving them a group discussion, you need to sort of ask a few of them or maybe everyone in the group to make a presentation. If you don't want to do it during your X class, which is happening today, let us say on Thursday, you can say on Monday we will have the presentation. That group discussion, you are supposed to go around, see how the students are discussing the topic that you have given to them. So your 1 hour lecture, 20 minutes you talk, 20 minutes you give them for the group discussion. If you feel that that day you can't ask them to present and they want more time, then the remaining 20 minutes you can give them some other activity. Now, formative, therefore, does not require extra time. The question is of weaving in the curricular transaction along with the assessment during the class itself. Now, coming to assessment for the so-called sports-related activities or arts-related activities or even the skill enhancement. Skill enhancement, basically, we don't want institutions to do that assessment. It's not the college. You are not competent, just as I am not competent for any skill-based course. It has to be done by the institution, which means the industry with whom they have collaborated, that they will give them some sort of an activity. Based on that activity, based on some small project that that industry gives, they will do the assessment. Now, we need to be very clear from our side. Firstly, if we teachers are not aware of it and we ourselves are not convinced about it, we may not be able to convince the student why this is very important in their life going forward. Please understand, you and I lived in a comfort zone when our teachers taught us only one single subject. Just knowing that subject, we were able to get a job. But the students going forward will not get jobs unless they know multiple disciplines, multiple skills, multiple competencies. Because when you have the disruptive technologies, the traditional jobs will just not be there. In 2 years' time, all clerical jobs across the globe is likely to vanish, because of the fact that computers with their programming methods don't have to employ individuals for that. Even in this online session that is happening, none of you all are taking down any minutes. That is being done by an AI tool. So you're living in a time when technology is becoming so invasive. And here we are sitting with some bullock cart age theory that this is the way in which we need to teach our students. So, Aarti, you will have to have complete change and don't force students to memorize. Memorizing has failed because students memorize without understanding it. And anybody can memorize. If they're there into the higher education, they are expected to understand, analyze, have the problem solving abilities, and then answer it. But we also, as teachers, let us be very clear, have failed miserably in not being able to ensure better learning outcomes of our students. So if you have to be relevant, if you need to tell your students why we are conducting these types, and your question that how do we cover the syllabus is not covered only by lecturing. Have you ever deployed techniques by which you give them some role play, some field work, some small assignment which involves them to go out and collect some data and so on? Those are all taken as completed. You are not dealing with a 5-year-old child. You are dealing with a student who is 18 years of age. And that student must have the ability to have some independent capabilities. So you may find it difficult. It is not easy when I say this, but you will have to start looking at innovative ways. Don't teach your students the way you were taught by your teachers, because the teachers who taught you did not have to deal with multidisciplinary education, did not have to deal with the importance of all the pillars of learning, which is both theory, skills, sustainability, flexibility, and so on. And our teachers did not have to even deal with the situation of disruptive technologies. Today, a student whom you are giving an assignment, that student will put it on ChatGPT and get you that assignment. And you can't stop the student from doing that. Then how do you ensure that even though the ChatGPT was used, yet that the student will be able to understand and assimilate? That is where we need to understand with the changing times. Let us not sit in some 16th century methods of continuing to teach students in the way we were being taught that time. It has completely changed. 20th century and 21st century are completely at variance. And so you will have semesterization, but your point regarding that 5th semester that they may have to wait for one additional year, as per the UGC guidelines, they have said that universities can conduct admission twice a year, which means that 1, 3, and 5 and 2, 4, and 6, which used to come only after a year, completely goes if you have dual cycles. Now, even if an institution does not want to do dual cycle of admission, nothing stops the university from doing 2 cycles of examinations. So please understand, the question is not about not having the guideline. The question is about the university or the college which you are teaching and which is affiliated to an ex-university does not want to make these changes. So there is no need in today's UGC guidelines that a student has to wait for a 1st semester or a 3rd semester or a 5th semester or 2, 4, and 6 in the odd even paradigm. It is allowed both the times. And it is because the university does not want, or it is having less staff. There may be other manpower issues, infrastructure issues. That is why they don't do it. But these have to get streamlined along with the kind of reforms that we are telling. And I'm not telling you that this is easy. It takes time. I can understand if a university does not want to conduct 2 times exams. Your point that exams, when they are conducted for all the semester 2 times, adds to the workload of most of y'all who may be doubling up as both doing on duty for the examination halls as well as for the examining of the answer scripts. So that is no doubt a challenge, but we need to explain to the student. Firstly, we should be convinced. What is greatly happening is that we ourselves are not convinced. When I say we, I mean all the young faculty who are there today. want that they should be that conducting education the way we were conducting education. If we do that, our student will be standing on the street road and sitting and staring at all the vehicles going by without getting any jobs. And that is not why they are there for education. So whether we like it or not, that change, the need to explain to them that if you want to be whiling away your time standing by the roadside and saying that नहीं नहीं एग्जाम्स मत कीजिए, 2 बार एग्जाम क्यों कर रहे हैं, हम फॉर्मेटिव असेसमेंट क्यों कर रहे हैं, स्किल के लिए एग्जाम क्यों कर रहे हैं, ये सब छोड़ दीजिए और एक ही बार एग्जाम कर दीजिए और उसमें हम पास करा दीजिए, बस हो गया हमारी जिंदगी. No, that is not the way. As a teacher, we must be able to convince both the student and the parent that this is not the way in which India can continue with an education system where 60% of our students do not have any employability qualities. That degree that they are getting can go straight into a waste paper basket because it is just a scrap of paper. It is not empowered them in any way with understanding or knowledge or capabilities or competencies. So we must be able to first understand that the existing system that we were following is outdated. It is irrelevant. If you want students to get jobs, if you want them to be surviving in a competitive world, they must be having assessments. We must, as teachers, judiciously use formative evaluation so that it will be very clear to the student that this assessment is not an add-on burden. This assessment is helping them to learn in a more effective manner. I hope I have been able to provoke all of you to understand that abandon your age-old techniques of lecturing and lecturing and lecturing without understanding whether the student really understood your lecture or not. If you have to do that, you must be using methods of group discussions, oral presentations, role plays, gamification, field work. These are the techniques. And every topic need not be covered through a lecture. You give them an activity, you can treat that topic as completed because you're not dealing with a school child. You're dealing with an 18-year-old who has all the capabilities of exercising the right to vote. And so also is capable of making independent, conscious decisions. Let's not kill that ability of an independent learner. Rather, you nurture that so that they become strong, independent, analytical, and scientific temper students. Rather than going on pacifying, कि नहीं ये सब चीज क्यों करा रहे, पता नहीं है, let us abandon all this, हमारा workload बढ़ रहा है, students को समझ में नहीं. That is not the way to go about it. And I don't mince my words to specify anybody because this is the change. If India has to say that it is going to be the global superpower, every student needs to get empowered. And we as teachers must first be convinced that what we are doing by only teaching them memorizing is doing a grave disservice to them. So I think my point is absolutely clear. And I want you all to sort of take down the fact that because you are a faculty, it doesn't mean that we will continue the way we were faculty earlier. We have to change as per the requirements because we are making our students future ready. Please understand, a graduate who passes out, let us say, in 2026, the coming year, somebody you said is in 5th semester, that student is not going to be productive till 2030. It has to be at least 40 to 45 years. Now, 2026 plus 40 or 45 years is 2067. And we are not in our wildest dreams able to think what are the kind of jobs, what this world would be looking like in 2067. So let's not close our eyes with the blinkers like the horse is wearing and not seeing what are the changes going around and comfortably thinking that we will continue to teach in the way we are teaching now. So whether you like it or not, it may not be very comfortable. I may have disturbed your comfort zones by provoking you in this manner, but that was essentially the purpose of my response to Aarti in such an elaborate manner. So I think that one single question has taken enough time. It is already about 2:55.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Aarti, for raising a very pertinent question. Has anyone got any specific question that you would like me to take up now? Yes, Dr. Deepak, yeah, please.
यस मैडम मैडम आपने जो अभी जो आपने जो प्रेजेंट डिस्कशन अभी आपने गवर्नेंस एंड मैनेजमेंट ऑफ हायर एजुकेशन इन क्या कहते हैं एनईपी 2020 के बारे में अभी जो जितनी बातें बताई
नहीं, ये गवर्नेंस के बारे में नहीं था डॉक्टर दीपक।
हाँ?
आपको गलत फहमी हुआ है।
हाँ जी,
वो ये मैं एक प्रश्न को आंसर कर रही थी, आपने शायद देर से ज्वाइन किया, इसलिए आपको लगा कि मैं गवर्नेंस के बारे में बात किया। मैंने गवर्नेंस के बारे में बात करना शुरू नहीं किया अभी तक। I was responding to Dr. Aarti Singh's question, which was related to the curricular and assessment reforms.
आप ठीक है, आप पहले उनका रिस्पॉन्ड करिए।
मैंने ऑलरेडी रिस्पॉन्ड कर चुका है डॉक्टर दीपक, and now I am getting into my talk on governance and management as per NEP 2020. Did you have any question on that?
हाँ नहीं, जो अभी आपने डिस्कशन किया, जो अभी आप
दीपक सर आरती मैडम ने क्वेश्चन किया था, उसका आंसर मैडम के द्वारा दिया गया है। अभी मैडम को कंटिन्यू करने दीजिए, उसके बाद आप बात कीजिएगा। ठीक है।
Okay. So we are now coming to the topic of governance and management as per the alignment of NEP 2020, which also covers leadership. Firstly, let me clarify that I am going to cover this in 3 segments. One is that why did we include for young faculty who may be assistant professors and associate professors a topic on governance and leadership and management, when many of you may not have become even directors or deans and so on, are basically faculty. Why is this topic included? Second, that all governance related issues in higher education directly relate to challenges that Indian higher education faces. And so at the second level, we will cover what are the challenges of India's higher education and to what extent the National Education Policy 2020 has attempted to address these challenges and sort of bring about solutions to these so-called problems and challenges. And I'm not really covering all the challenges, but some of the major challenges. And then finally, we cover leadership, why it is so important in improving the governance of our higher education institutions, and what are the instruments that we proposed in the NEP by which our higher education institutions can become more empowered with effective governance and effective planning. So first and foremost, why is this topic included? As I said, even if you are an assistant professor or a very young faculty who has just joined, maybe with 2 years experience, some of you with 7 years experience, some of you may be associate professors, you may not have become deans or directors. But it is very important to understand that leadership is not when you reach a peak position. Leadership has to be there in each one of us. And therefore, as faculty, first and foremost, you must have the conviction that you are an academic leader. You are not just there as a faculty, but you are an academic leader. And that leadership is at 3 levels. It is young or entry-level leadership that we are talking about, mid-level leadership, and senior-level leadership. But whatever level it is, all of us as faculty firstly must understand that you are not just what your appointment letter tells you, an assistant professor in sociology or economics or physics or so, but that even though you are just an assistant professor, you are also a leader in the making. And that primarily you are an academic leader possessing certain qualities by which you are visioning, strategizing, and doing a number of things. I'll come to that. Now, coming to the second part, why when we talk about governance, it is important to broadly understand the canvas of challenges that Indian higher education system faces. So all of us here know that India has one of the world's largest higher education systems. quantitatively, in terms of numbers, we are looking at huge numbers. We are looking at 1,200 universities, 48,000 affiliated colleges, about 13 to 14,000 standalone institutions, 1.6 million faculty, and 44 million students. Mind-boggling numbers. Please understand, these numbers are complicated by the fact that education as a subject is in the concurrent list of the constitution of this country, by which both the union government or the central government, which brings out policies, depend largely upon the state governments for the effective implementation of all the guidelines, rules, and regulations. But having said that, it is equally important to understand that higher education institutions, even if we may not have been declared as autonomous by the UGC, are basically autonomous bodies, in the sense that no one can come and dictate to us how we need to do activities which are related to curricular planning, the academic transactions, and so also the conduct of the exams, as long as we follow the broad rules and regulations and do not violate the guidelines that the regulators bring about. But what is the challenge of having such a large higher education landscape? The challenge comes from the variety of institutions we have. On one hand, when I talked about 1,200 universities, not all of them come under one jurisdiction. They come under centrally funded institutions. The current program is being conducted by AMU, which is a centrally funded central university. So we have centrally funded institutions like central universities, IITs, NITs, triple IITs, ICERs, or IIMs, and a number of other institutions like National Institute of Fashion Technology. 17 Government of India ministries control what we call centrally funded institutions, who get funding directly from the Government of India and come under the administrative control of the different line ministries, the largest being the Ministry of Education. But at the same time, these institutions do have a pan-India jurisdiction. So you will find students across the country studying in these institutions, largely. As opposed to this, the bulk of the universities are state universities or state technical institutions. So that is the second category, which is again, every state having it. Largely the state cannot go beyond the geographical jurisdiction of its own state. You may have some off-campus centers which are through the distance education, but not as a regular campus that is allowed, because that is not permitted by the UGC. Then you have private universities, that is not at the national level. Private universities are created by the states who pass legislation to allow private universities. So not all states in this country have private universities. And then you have the deemed to be universities. In all this, there is additional one dimension too, that some are unitary universities, which are non-affiliating, and some are affiliating universities. So in the NEP, when we were talking about this complex structure, we realized that it is this complexity of the variety that is adding to the challenge of effective governance. Why the challenge? Centrally funded institutions, which I told you, they are about 150 in number, as opposed to that 1,200 that I'm talking about, which means that the bulk of the institutions are not centrally funded, but centrally funded get huge funding. State universities are starved of funds because they are getting some development grant from the UGC, and the state government allocates something from its state budget. So let us assume a state university averaging to get something like 20 crores per year, as against an IIT that gets about 800 crores per year, as against a central university which gets about 240 crores per year. Now, where is the mismatch? The 94% of that 44 million students are studying in state universities, whereas only 6% study in centrally funded institutions. So that is where that mismatch causes the challenge. Huge funding catering to only 6% of the total students in higher education, 94% with minimal funding studying in the state universities and in the private universities. This is where that huge quantity is not having a direct bearing on the quality. And therefore, where funding is limited and there are large number of students, you will find that the quality of education gets deteriorated. Added to that is the affiliating system. One university affiliating 500, 600, 700, 800, 1200 colleges under one university. When you have a system of affiliation where one university affiliates so many colleges, only one thing remains uniform. What? The examination pattern. That is, it is conducted twice a year or whatever. So there is no other uniformity in the quality, in the type of teaching learning resources, in the type of, let us say, infrastructure, libraries, laboratories, information and communication technologies, nothing. You are only saying that X college is affiliated to a university. Some are excellent colleges and some are not excellent. But what does that degree certificate tell you? That all come from that same university. And so what happens? An extremely well-established college. I'm a product of Bombay University and I studied in Mithibai College, which in terms of NIRF ranking comes within the top 20. But there are other colleges under Bombay University which may not have that quality, but the student coming out is not carrying a certificate of that college. It is carrying the certificate of Bombay University. And so, how do you maintain uniformity in the quality? The only thing that the NEP said is that let us abandon the affiliating system. Affiliation in independent India, when we became independent, helped us to provide access to higher education. But over a period of time, the numbers that we are talking about make it very difficult, and that is why the second reform that we said in the NEP is that let us do away with affiliation, not tomorrow, but over a period of 15 to 20 years. And when we do away with affiliation, what are we suggesting? That the affiliating college acquires certain standards and benchmarks with the support of the host university, mentoring of other good institutions, support from the state government, so that they get accredited, ranked, and in a graded manner, we give them autonomy. So the national education policy, major governance reform is the change in the affiliating system. And all of you who come in from affiliated colleges, please understand that even if we may not have, let us say, punitive action, it is desirable to ensure better quality, that an affiliated college becomes a strong institution, goes in for accreditation, goes in for ranking, meets all quality assurance standards, and over a 15-year period, can you think of becoming an autonomous institution? So right now, there is a churning that can take place, because there is another direction that the NEP said. NEP said that instead of looking at centrally funded, state funded, private, deemed, can we categorize higher education institutions as teaching intensive or research intensive? What is the meaning of that? Most of our colleges are undergraduate teaching colleges. So we become teaching intensive because we are largely looking at UG education. But in some departments, let us think that we have good qualified faculty, all the facilities are available. We can then move to offering PG and doctoral programs, not in all the departments, but in those departments only. So teaching intensive means the thrust is on undergraduate, but in some departments you can have PG and doctoral. How many of your institutions or your universities are capable of this? Research intensive, they are by nature focusing on PG and doctoral and postdoctoral. And in some departments, they may like to start undergraduate programs. Now, let us say a university like AMU, which is not only having the postgraduate and the doctoral across range of disciplines, not just in BA, BCom, BSc, they have medicine, they have law, they have agriculture, so many things. Such institutions can move on to become what we call multidisciplinary education and research university. So MERUS is a higher order of looking at today's comprehensive universities, what we say, to become multidisciplinary education and research universities. Now, to do all this, how can an institution today, it cannot suddenly say my wish list that tomorrow I will become this. To do all this, the NEP has talked about, and I'll come to that in under 15 minutes or so, that is preparing an institutional development plan. This is a document that every higher education institution, be it a college or a university, must prepare so that it is able to chart an action plan and a plan of strategy to see going forward where my college or my university can go. And I'll elaborate that a little later. But let me come to the other challenges. So quantitatively, we know we have addressed the issue of access because we have a large higher education system, but the challenges relating to governance is what we have addressed. But the challenge is of poor quality of higher education. The quality of higher education comes from multiple reasons. 1,200 universities in the global rankings, whether it is Shanghai rankings or QS rankings or Times rankings, how many of them feature in that? Less than 10, less than 15. If you go up to 300, you may get something like about 25 or 30. So we need not clap for ourselves or clap on our backs, because it is indicative that though India has such a large higher education institutions, it is not able to compete in the global rankings. Why that happens? It happens for 2 or 3 reasons. One, the disconnect between teaching and research. We have made this grave mistake of thinking that teaching and research are 2 separate activities, and that at the undergraduate level, we must only focus on teaching. I can see that the UGC technical team is asking you all to switch on the cameras. I please once again request all the participants to put on the cameras. Let us ensure some discipline. If we are not disciplined ourselves, how do we expect our students to be disciplined? We are not conducting this program for the students. I am conducting it for the faculty. At least I expect faculty to be ensuring that kind of rigor and discipline. The important part is to understand that research and teaching are like 2 sides of the same coin. And that is why when I told to Aarti the importance of critical thinking and problem solving, these are all connected to the spirit of inquiry and the power of curiosity. And even at undergraduate education, in the 4-year undergraduate program, we talked about research skills as one of the common courses. And we have also talked about research projects, including the 4th year of the bachelor's, which could be in research. And this is not happening in higher education alone. It has been started with the school education right from class 6, where we are telling teachers to abandon the teaching methods which do not allow children to do projects and activities. So right from class 6, the emphasis on putting greater, let us say, emphasis on the students' power of inquiry, rational thinking, scientific temper, analytical capabilities, problem-solving abilities, collaborative learning skills. These all are being emphasized. And in higher education, we created the National Research Foundation, which is a large body aiming at creating an ecosystem where research can be nurtured at the undergraduate level. How? By establishing linkages between undergraduate colleges or universities with research laboratories and with industry. This ecosystem has to be created. Are you doing it? Ask yourself discomforting questions. Ask yourselves questions why my institution is stagnating to the level from where it was created till now, and why are we not able to change that? That is not taking changed or getting changed only by a principal or by the management. We as faculty have to become more proactive so that we try to use all these facilities and all these new initiatives that have come in as a consequence of the national education policy. So teaching and research needs to be seen as two sides of the same coin, complementing one another, give students small projects so that their research skills get honed. Taking that further is innovation. Innovation means your institution should conduct hackathons. I don't want to embarrass anyone, but do we conduct hackathons? Hackathons allow for children to come out with new ideas. Please understand, the children of today are knowing much more than we are as far as technology and so many other things. They may not know all what you are expecting them to memorize, and memorizing is of no use to them going forward. But they need to be encouraged to think innovatively. That can happen only if we as faculty think innovatively. If we are sitting, as I told you, in a bullock cart age, and then we think that our students will start looking at the space, that is not going to happen. So research, innovation, and its linkage with teaching. And on the other side, the second gap that we had is that we thought teaching or knowledge acquisition and skills are not amalgamated. That is why when we introduced the skill enhancement course, 21st century learning is not just about learning cognitive aspects. It is also experiential. It is also practical. It is also hands-on. And that is why the skill enhancement courses, small internship projects, field work, these are all introduced. And skills today is not preparing students to become plumbers or carpenters or masons and so on. It is looking at very high order things like logistics management, retail management, cold chain management, agribusiness management, digital marketing, and so many in the area of hospital administration, in the area of hospitality, travel and tourism, the entire MSME sector. These are all the skill-based courses. If our students merely go out with a piece of paper saying, I learned 18 subjects in sociology and so on, be assured that they will be standing by the roadside years even after they have completed their graduation, because they will not possess any qualities that can be taken up by the industry or any job opportunities that can come their way. So let us not be suicidal when we deal with our students. We are not there to merely get our pay slips and come back. We are there because we want the student coming into higher education to become a productive individual, contributing to his or her individual growth and contributing to the nation's growth and becoming tomorrow the global citizen in the world. So the quality of India's higher education, that has been addressed through that 4-year holistic, integrated, flexible, multidisciplinary education. Lot of flexibility courses, flexibility to do it online, flexibility to do it across multiple institutions, all these flexibility with a multiple entry and exit, in keeping with what the SDG Goal 4 says, to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education with lifelong learning opportunities. Merely because I didn't complete the degree in straight 3 years or straight 4 years, I cannot be condemned to be a dropout or a failure. So we addressed that gap through this exercise. The third challenge is not related to quantity or quality, but equity. And that is the fact that India has a lot of social, regional, economic, locational, gender, and other disparities. And therefore, the need that when you say in the policy that you want to reach a gross enrollment target of 50% by 2035, please understand in absolute terms, from 44 million students, we are saying we should become 80 million students. That 80 million students must be representative of all the cross sections of our society, and that every child gets an equal opportunity to participate in higher education. So when we wrote chapter 6 and chapter 14 on equity and inclusion in higher education, we looked at a term called socially and economically disadvantaged groups, so as to include the SCs, STs, OBCs, linguistic and religious minorities, women, transgenders, urban poor, children with learning disabilities, children with physical disabilities, children of migrant families. All these were taken into account. And as a system of education, when you teach your class, I don't know, you must, if this is your last day, you must have had someone who took a session on student diversity in your class, in your program. It has, yes, Swati, I'll take up the question towards the end. Please, can you hold on? Can we keep it for the last, Swati? Yeah, we'll take questions at about 3:45. That will be the time I'll break up for the questioners. Now, when coming to the need for ensuring equality of opportunity, we said you can have gender inclusion funds, social inclusion funds, enhanced scholarships, and not just the public funded institutions, but also the private funded institutions to provide those scholarships. Now, when you enter a class, your college is situated in a certain socio-economic context. How many students come from these so-called disadvantaged groups? I am not asking you to identify them for discriminating against them, but to ensure that whether your institution has been inclusive. How many children with physical disabilities? How many children with learning disabilities? Where are they going? If they are not coming to your college, which is 2 kilometers in radius, if you have done, one of the projects that you can give your students is to make an analysis of this, to identify a mapping. Where are the students coming from, and where are these children who are having learning disabilities and physical disabilities? If they are not coming into our college, where are they going? These are questions we have to ask, not just get that piece of paper that you get for your attendance and just walk into the class and start assuming that you have taken care of the class. We need to know the social composition of our class, and we need to be inclusive in the way we look at it in a non-discriminatory manner. So here is where we said in higher education, we will allow it in bilingual education or in regional languages. Why? Because a student coming from a rural background who had education, let us say in Marathi or Gujarati or Hindi or any other language, they are asked to come into English medium higher education. They may not necessarily be able to cope with that at all. And you need not in your class, when you give them group discussions, say that every student needs to speak in English when they come in. You can say you can use both the languages, let it be bilingual, don't allow other students to ridicule them, and allow them to express it. English is not intelligence. English is just a mode of communicating in a language. Whether I communicate that in English or in Hindi or in a regional language, it should not be penalized. Therefore, when you are encouraging your students to develop confidence by giving them group activities, and when they come in for presentations, allow them that benefit. But then we included the language ability enhancement courses so that over time, the communication skills in English is built up. Because we know that you cannot ignore the overemphasis that English has in the world of employment. So disparities is another area that we look at. The other 2 or 3 challenges that we have, one relates to the modes of learning. As per a projection, by 2040, we are looking at a scenario whether colleges and universities will continue in brick and mortar, whether we will all go online, whether we will all go into virtual mode, in which case, what would we be doing as teachers? Please understand, it is not far off. The only hope that we are having is that though you have online education, distance education, you are having hybrid models of learning, ultimately, we always believe that learning which happens in a face-to-face environment is much more enriching, and it is only that factor which we are hoping that higher education institutions in brick and mortar will not become a dinosaur over time, that they will not become extinct, that they will still be there. But let us also understand that the role of technology and within our classrooms itself, integrating technology for hybrid models of teaching, for blended models of teaching, encouraging the distance mode, 40% of your credits can be done through online education as per the 4-year curriculum. UGC guidelines allow it. How many of us tell our students this, that they can do a MOOCs course? They can do it from, if you are in AMU, UP, the Rajashri Open University, which is there, or the UP Technical Open University, which is there. Are we telling our students all this? They are allowed to do it. And these are the ways in which you encourage multiple models of technology-driven education. The last 2 points, one is funding, and I'll come to that in a short while when I talk about governance in the last segment. And the other is of autonomy and accountability, as well as internationalization. How many of your campuses have international students? How many of your institutions have an international students office? The NEP talks in terms of internationalizing higher education, not because we think that it is going to give us some fancy recognition, but because it is an inevitable reality of a global economy. Mobility is an inevitable reality of a global society today. Faculty mobility, student mobility, program mobility, that is credit mobility, and institutional mobility. And on program mobility, there are joint degrees, dual degrees, and twinning programs. Have we, in respect of the course that I teach, in the discipline that I am associated with, have we ever thought that we can have a twinning arrangement with another university? It is permitted. How many of us encourage foreign students? Today, for NAC accreditation, for NIRF ranking, we give a premium as a performance indicator to have international students. But international students will not come to us for a regular BA, BCom, BSc, unless we are offering very unique type of courses related to, let's say, languages, related to, say, performing arts, related to, let's say, global economizations that happen, so many things that are happening globally and which we may have our strength. So when we are seeing a steady migration of our students outside. Today, we are talking about 7.5 million students going out of India for undergraduate education alone. And how many students come from outside India? Just 40,000 students. And we have placed a goal that India will come back to its old glory, where like Nalanda and Takshashila, we were attracting foreign scholars. But let us not even think about that. At the minimal level, can we put a target of getting in international students on our campus? Can we work towards that in your IDP? Can you put that? The last point is on autonomy and accountability. With my years of experience in the government of India, I have realized that higher education institutions are scared of the word autonomy. Why? Because they feel that if we become autonomous, we will not get funds from the UGC or from the state government. Plus, please understand, academic autonomy, administrative autonomy, and over time, financial autonomy is always a desirable one. And as far as possible, the balancing between accountability when public funds are given, and therefore, in our regulatory framework, our suggestion to have light but tight regulation comes from the need to balance autonomy and accountability. Which brings me to the last two segments. One is about leadership. In all these efforts of looking at all these challenges, it is important that our higher education institutions, if they have to achieve the goals of access, equity, quality, and so on, must have effective leadership. And that leadership, as I told you, is not when you become the principal of a college or the director of an institution or the vice chancellor of a university. At the levels that you are itself, you must be able to nurture those leadership qualities. Roughly, we are talking about every academic faculty being an academic leader must have the capability of visioning and strategizing. How many of you have visited the websites of your own college or university? I do not know. But have a look at it. When the college or the university was established, it articulated a vision, a mission, and goals and objectives. That may have been 50 years back or may have been 100 years back. That was never revised or never revisited. Every institution is responding to changes that happen. And therefore, that time the vision will not factor in sustainability. It will not factor in technology. It will not factor in the importance of gender equity. It will not factor in the importance of environment and climate action. So, revisit the vision statement and strategize it. How do we achieve those goals? So, visioning and strategizing. Good communication skills. Good communication skills is the quality of any leader. When, for example, anecdotally, I can give you that. You must have all heard about Rohit Vemula and the suicide that happened on the campus of the University of Hyderabad. When I was sent as a part of the fact-finding team, one of the greatest areas that I observed was that child was forced into suicide because of the lack of communication between the students and the leadership in the institution. My report has it. You must always have very effective communication skills, not just for your lecturing, but to achieve two things. Our education institutions are not like industrial bodies or like corporate organization where there is only management and employees. We have students, we have teachers, we have parents, we have technical staff, we have administrative staff, we have a variety of manpower. And there is always scope for friction. So communication, effective communication prevents the possibilities of conflict. And when conflict happens, you must have effective conflict resolution methods, which means that as a good leader, you must take timely decisions at the most appropriate time, not take it after 10 days. You have to take that time at that appropriate juncture to prevent a crisis from happening. The other qualities relate to the students and the teachers as an institution. Students have to be provided all the support in terms of their academic excellence, good teaching, ensuring that there is no discrimination, that there is grievance redressal cells, and generally a feeling of diversity. In the same way, teachers must be given freedom from the institution to attend programs, seminars, participate in conferences, and give them all the teaching learning resources. That is why when we wrote the chapter on energized, motivated, and capable faculty, we said the fundamental thing is that teachers must be provided the basic amenities, including the basic working conditions, so that they are able to perform. If you don't have drinking water, you don't have sanitation, you don't have a staff room, you don't have a common room, you don't have the assistance of people who can help you in a laboratory, you cannot work. And therefore, all institutions must understand teachers are not some robots that are there. Teachers are human beings and they need to be provided all these amenities and the facilities. Teachers must also feel secure that having entered a job as an assistant professor, that I have a proper career growth going forward. So the need for a very clear trajectory for career growth, as well as their professional development. When I was in the ministry, I had to hear a lot of insults that the bureaucrats used to say about the teaching fraternity. It used to pinch me because I'm a teacher at heart and posted into the ministry for something. The feeling was that they said teachers come into teaching because they never got any other job. The second thing they said is, having come into teaching because they did not get any job, they don't cultivate the art of teaching effectively, and that they are very unprofessional. That is when the Malviya mission came into existence. The National Mission on Teachers and Teaching is an outcome of those kind of observations, where I said that a bureaucrat who joins as an assistant collector and goes on to become the secretary to the government of India in his entire or her entire career has continuous professional development through training and retraining, including international training. And therefore, that we should have a similar mechanism. The faculty has already proved the minimum eligibility to become a faculty. After that, they need to have continuous training and professional capacity building so that they are able to achieve better performance going forward. And on funding, I will talk about that later. As I said earlier, leadership, teachers, students, internationalization. As I said earlier, you have to. And the point also is of saying that what is higher education all about? It is about good teaching, good research, good social engagement, good, let us say, social responsibility. And therefore, even on the extension part, it is not just the NSS and the NCC. Get your students to understand that we make a difference to the community around us. And that social engagement is very critical to our saying that one of the goals of higher education is to become better human beings, humanistic by nature, contributing to the betterment of the society and the community and the world at large. That is the important part that here. And let me come to the instrumentality of an IDP. NEP said that all higher education institutions will prepare an institutional development plan. It is nothing like rocket science. All that we are saying is that every institution must have a strategic action plan. An action plan where you do a SWOT analysis to identify the strengths and the weaknesses and the opportunities and the challenges of your institution, and create a growth strategy in 3 years where my institution should go, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 15 years. So it's immediate, short term, mid-term, long term, and really a future projection. Making this IDP is not outsourced to a third-party agency. It has to be prepared within the institution in a very collegiate body, having teacher representatives, parent representatives, student representatives, senior management representatives, civil society, the industry, sports persons, artists, agriculturalists, scientists, all of them being there in a task force within the institution. And then saying that in terms of access, equity, quality, affordability, and accountability, what are those quantifiable targets that we can achieve in what time period, and what would be the budgetary requirement for that. And this document, having been prepared, is not to be prepared, presented to someone and thrown on the top of a library shelf. It is a living document that you will use for monitoring and review of the growth of your institution. And if you want more details, I have written n number of articles. You can Google search my name. You will be able to get that articles. How do you prepare a effective IDP? My article includes the UGC guidelines. What are the steps suggested? There is no one single template. Template is just giving you what you need to cover in that. But basically, you need to look at all the parameters that will ensure that your institution can become a robust institution, and that by 2045, your college or your university will not become a non-existent institution. Please remember, that is like a Damocles sword hanging over all our heads, that many institutions in the churning will have to vanish unless they have a proper strategic plan of action. Now, on the internal governing bodies, we have said that all our institutions have a number of internal governing bodies. The academic councils, the research councils, the board of management, or the executive body, or the senate, they are called by different nomenclatures, depending upon whether it's a state institution or a private institution or a central institution. They are all having different names. But all that we were trying to say is that these internal governing bodies must work in a very fair, transparent, participative, and democratic manner. And we also suggested that if at all any one of those bodies, which are like the executive council or the board of management and so on, can be replaced with an empowered board of governors, which is having, as I told you, like for the IDP, a task force representative of all the stakeholders, then that will be even more a democratically elected body, which will have a life term of only 2 years and which could be on rotation. In all this exercise, we have been very clear in saying two things: that in Indian context, education remains a not-for-profit activity, that education is a public good, and that we will not allow educational institutions to do profiteering or blatant commercialization. And therefore, we have clearly said that internal checks and balances, external monitoring, all become important, with clearly the need to understand that I cannot market education like I market a bathing soap. It has to be understood that education is a public good. And it has to be that we, in fact, did not write it, but we were talking about cross-subsidization of fees, where the rich could be charged more and the poor could be exempted altogether. But we could not have the courage to write that. But going forward, it is very odd to see a student coming in a BMW car and paying 50 rupees as the tuition fees, and another student not having 2 meals a day paying that same amount. That amounts to a certain degree of inequality. But the role of technology in ensuring transparent running of the institutions by self-disclosure and putting everything on the website, so that when I look at a website, I get all the details: who are the staff, what are the departments, how many classes are taking place, what are the laboratories, what are the facilities available, how many exams have been conducted, what is my accreditation, what is my ranking, what is my All India survey data, everything being available. So we recommended the use of technology to avoid inspection, and in the accreditation reforms that is happening, and to move towards using management information systems, enterprise resource planning, all these methods, so that you have very robust and public disclosure methods being followed. I may take up questions if you want on regulation, but suffice it to say that on the external regulation and the overhauling of the UGC and AICTE, this time in the monsoon session, the Honorable Minister for State has said that they may bring out the Heki bill. If that comes about, then you will have a new architecture which will have 4 independent bodies, and where the UGC becomes null and void, AICTE, NCT will become professional standard setting bodies. But we have to wait and see, because it is a very major reform, and unless they are able to discuss it in the parliament, it cannot come out except through a legislative measure. I think I'll stop over here, keep the remaining 15-20 minutes for interaction. And if we have someone who has raised hands earlier, please go ahead and ask the question now. Dr. Deepak, please go ahead. Please go ahead, Dr. Deepak. Please unmute yourself. You're not audible. Please yeah.
I have clearly listened and
Where are you teaching and what do you teach, Dr. Deepak, first?
My subject is sociology, and I'm from Anamala University. And I clearly and thoroughly listen your talk. That is
Yeah, that's what we are expected to be doing. Yeah, tell me your question, please.
मैंने आपका अच्छे से सुना आपका, और आपका प्रेजेंटेशन बहुत बढ़िया था, और उसमें एक चीज मैं उसमें ऐड करना चाहूंगा। ये जो आज के प्रेजेंट सिनेरियो में जो हमारे देश में एक सबसे बड़ी एक है इशू है, क्वालिटी एश्योरेंस इन हायर एजुकेशन।
हाँ, बताइए उसमें क्या आप उसमें क्या पूछना चाहेंगे? क्वालिटी एश्योरेंस के बारे में क्या जानना चाहते हैं आप?
हाँ, नहीं, मैं उसमें कि जो उसमें जो उसके की इश्यूज हैं, लाइक सेल्फ असेसमेंट और सेल्फ असेसमेंट, और उसमें लैक ऑफ ऑब्जेक्टिविटी है, ट्रांसपेरेंसी नहीं है, लिमिटेड ट्रांसपेरेंसी है, और जो हमारी प्रैक्टिसेस हैं वो क्या कहते हैं, इनकंसिस्टेंट है, और रिसोर्स हमारे पास फंडिंग पूरी नहीं है, इनएडुकेट है, और जो फंडिंग हो रही है वो पूरे तरीके से मिलती नहीं है
जी,
और जो हमारा क्या कहते हैं करिकुलम है वो आउटडेटेड है, वो, और हमारा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जो है वो उसके अंदर बहुत सारी कमियां हैं।
नहीं, ये तो सारे चीज हम यही तो हमने आपको अभी बताया। मैं आपसे पूरी सहमत हूँ कि यही तो चिंता की बात है कि सारे संस्थाओं में, सारे इंस्टीट्यूशंस के एक ही लेवल के इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, टीचर फैकल्टी पोजीशंस नहीं है, और बहुत सारे लैक ऑफ ट्रांसपेरेंसी के वजह से। इसके लिए तो हम ये सारे रिफॉर्म्स बता रहे हैं, और ये रिफॉर्म्स जरूरी है कि हमारी प्रिंसिपल या डायरेक्टर खुद नहीं कर पाएंगे, हम भी उसमें प्रोएक्टिव होनी बहुत जरूरी है। अपनी तरफ से एज अ फैकल्टी जो चीज हम भी कर सकते हैं, सपोज आपके इंस्टीट्यूशन में ऑल इंडिया सर्वे हायर एजुकेशन का डेटा मांगी जाती है, सिर्फ स्टैटिस्टिक्स के लिए डेटा देना जरूरी नहीं है। हमें यह भी देखना है कि गए साल से और इस साल में क्या अंतर हुआ है उस डेटा में। हमारी एनरोलमेंट बढ़ गई है क्या, हमारे SC ST स्टूडेंट्स या बाकी जो पिछड़े वर्ग के लोग और बढ़ गए क्या, कोई लर्निंग डिसेबिलिटी स्टूडेंट्स आए हैं क्या, कितने इंटरनेशनल स्टूडेंट्स बढ़ गए हैं, ये किसी और के ऊपर निर्भर नहीं है, ये अपने आप पे निर्भर है ये।
Yes.
और जब हम डेटा देते हैं, ये सिर्फ डेटा कलेक्शन के लिए नहीं होती है, डेटा इज अ काइंड ऑफ अ टूल to help us to bring about improvements. And I think we as faculty have somehow not been able to be very proactive, and all of us have to start thinking कि मैं क्या कर सकते हैं उसके लिए।
Yes.
आप अपने तरफ से ये प्रश्न अपने आप से पूछिए कि मेरे संस्था में अगर चेंजेस लेके आना है, बेटर क्वालिटी लेके आना है, किस तरह से जो अवेलेबल फंड है उसकी पूरी तरह से ऑप्टिमली यूज करे। ये सब किसी और से नहीं आना है, हर एक फैकल्टी अपने आप में, इसलिए मैंने बताया कि हम अपने आप में एक लीडर है।
Yes.
और एक लीडर की तरह अगर हम सोच लेके आए तो बहुत सारे चीज जो कमियां मैंने बताए, जो आप दोहरा रहे हैं, ये सारे चीज को हम टैकल करते हैं, लेकिन ये ओवरनाइट नहीं होगी। ये भी बहुत प्रैग्मेटिकली हमें ध्यान में लेना है कि ओवर टाइम ये होती है, बट लेट अस स्टार्ट मेकिंग द फर्स्ट स्टेप, दैट इज important. So thank you, Dr. Deepak. You are echoing my thoughts, and I think I got the point that you are in agreement to the issues that we are talking about. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Somebody else had raised the hand. Go ahead. Ji, Nisam, please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I have attended many lectures. In most of the lectures, the instructor or the experts say that we should improve our communication skills. So my question is there, whether communication skills and subject knowledge is correlated or they are separate thing. Means
कम्युनिकेशन स्किल, पहले तो ये बताइए कि निसाम आप क्या सिखाते हैं और कहाँ पे सिखा रहे हैं आप?
Yes, ma'am.
कहाँ सिखाते हैं आप, and what do you teach?
I teach English subject
Okay, where are you teaching that?
in RIMT University, Punjab.
Punjab. Okay. Now to come to your question, whether communication skills and subject knowledge are different. No.
Hmm.
Though
No,
communication skill is a interdisciplinary course. Please understand. Whether I am teaching physics, or whether I teach mechanical engineering, or whether I teach forensic science, I must inculcate in students effective communication skills. It is not just for language teachers. The more a student has effective communication skills, which means firstly, the person should have clarity of thought and then use the right kind of words when communicating that, because that becomes very important in group discussions and in interviews when they go outside. So all students have to be given the right kind of communication skills. It is not just for literature students, but as I said, we have allowed that we will allow higher education in regional languages. जो आपके फर्स्ट ईयर के बच्चे आ जाएंगे, ये बहुत पॉसिबल है कि वो रूरल बैकग्राउंड से आया है या आई है और ये इंग्लिश में बात करने से बहुत डिफिडेंट फील करते हैं. At that time, you have to be very understanding to allow them to speak in their local languages and gradually build up their communication abilities in English language. This is a request to all faculty that it is not necessary that we speak very eloquently only in English language. If they are able to explain a concept or a topic, even in Hindi or Marathi or any language, please allow them to do that, but gradually build their English communication skills. So there is no question of whether the two are separate or not. The importance is that the two have to be integrated together so that they have good communication skills as well as understand the topic. And that is why I said communication skills is an interdisciplinary course. Any topic or any subject that we teach, we must nurture good communication skills in our students?
Ma'am, English is just one language, just medium of communicating our ideas. Communication may be in any language, but I
Yes.
want to ask one question, that is, any learned person, whoever is learned, that is a very good communicator. Is there any example of a person who is not very learned person, still he is very good communicator?
Bulk of us. The bulk of the world is people who are talking a lot effectively, but necessarily need not be very learned persons. There is no two things about it. So the most learned person may not necessarily be a very effective communicator. It is like saying whether all teachers are good researchers. Some of us are very good teachers, but we may not be very good researchers. So there is no exclusionary aspect. It is not that it is either or. You can be learned, but not necessarily have good communication skills, or you may be very uneducated, but you have very effective communication skills. So there is really no fixed model as such, and we see all these varieties. That is why life is so interesting, isn't it? So thank you for that observation. Yeah. Any other question?
Thank you.
Can anyone read out if there are questions in the chat box, please, for me? Questions, except that many of you seem to have liked the discussion. Any other question? If not, we can ask AMU to officially wind up the program.
राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति 2020 की दृष्टि से उच्च शिक्षा का शासन एवं प्रबंधन विषय पर आपके द्वारा बहुत विस्तार से हमें बताया गया कि किस तरह हम NEP 2020 के तहत शिक्षा प्रणाली को अधिक जवाबदेह, पारदर्शी और संस्थागत रूप से स्वतंत्र बनाने की दिशा में प्रयास कर सकते हैं। आपके द्वारा उच्च शिक्षा संस्थानों के स्वायत्तता, एकेडमिक एवं प्रशासनिक सुधार और तकनीकी समावेशन की उपयोगिता पर भी जोर दिया गया। इतनी अच्छी ज्ञानवर्धक जानकारी देने के लिए आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद मैडम। आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, और हम चाहेंगे कि आप आगे भी हम आपसे इसी तरह जुड़ते रहें। बहुत अच्छा प्रेजेंटेशन था मैम आपका, बहुत ही बढ़िया वाला।
बहुत बहुत
Thank you,
धन्यवाद,
ma'am.
and wish you all the very best. Yeah, wish each one
Thank
of
you,
you
ma'am.
all the very best. Thank you.
ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah.
Hello. 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 Hello.